radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. How you doing? How you doing? Today is Monday, January 13th, 2020. 13 days into the new year, only 353 days left. We are live from a bunker. A bunker that is somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? I'm in a great mood. Yes, I am, because tonight, kicking off another sensational week here on Fade to Black, we have Linda Moulton Howe. That's the way you kick off 2020. Linda Moulton Howe is here. Tomorrow night, Scott Wolter is back. Right here on Fade to Black. Scott blows my mind. That's tomorrow night. Wednesday night, first-time guest, Dr. Daniel Estelin is here. Thursday night's another Fader night with open lines all night long. Tonight it's Linda, and she's here. We are going to talk about her latest research, what's going on this planet and around us, up in the stars, all the way down to here. We're going to look forward into 2020. We're going to take a brief look back at 2019. I'm going to say it. It's the year that wasn't disclosure. Not yet. Linda is a graduate of Stanford University with a master's degree in communication. She has devoted her documentary, film, television, radio, and writing and reporting career to productions concerning science, medicine, and the environment. Ms. Howe has received 3 regional Emmys, a national Emmy nomination, and a Station Peabody Award, among others. And, of course, she has EarthFiles.com. She has appeared on Ancient Aliens since its first season. She's traveled to Venezuela, Peru, Brazil, England, Norway, France, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Yugoslavia, Turkey, Ethiopia, Kenya, Egypt, Australia, Japan, Canada, Mexico, the Yucatan, and Puerto Rico. In addition to all of her traveling and research with Earth Files, every Wednesday evening you can find Linda live on YouTube hanging out with all of you. And I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, Linda Moulton Howe. Linda, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Jimmy. And this is a year that seems to be blasting out with mysteries in some directions, the sadness in Australia with the fires, the terror of what was going to happen in the Middle East, all coming together in a week and a half time period. And I keep wondering if that is the sign that we're going to be in a 2020 year that will truly be revolutionary, and will we get that headline that you and I and others have been impatiently waiting for, which is the truth that we're not alone in this universe. I hope it happens this year.
Well, if we spin it all back, and speaking to you like this, it's such an honor for me to even to be able to ask this question. But spinning all the way back to like before Strange Harvest, right? Going back all the way to today. We are now firmly planted, Linda, in 2020. A lot has happened since, but it's not quite enough, is it? Do you think that we're finally closer than we've ever been?
Yes, absolutely. And right now, the whole year now, it may have a tone that has been set off by the mystery drones in Colorado and Nebraska.
Sure.
And I bring this up because it really, truly is a strange mystery. At earthfiles.com, I have a part 1 and a part 2 on this. I've been doing a lot of work. Have Alex Peterson. He is an Angus raiser in Hagler, Nebraska. And I had worked with him in the past on mutilations that were bloodless, trackless, and highly strange at his ranch way down in the southwestern corner where Nebraska and Colorado and Kansas meet. That's where he is. Mm-hmm. Well, he has been personally seeing and recording what he says it's got to be either drones or something that is on some kind of a pattern, because it has been coming every night since I first talked to him about 10 days ago. He has been going out with his rifle scope, which it works on thermal frequencies, and he has been getting very unusual patterns and lights in the sky. And I have a fascinating comparison that he did. When I asked him, I said, can you take your rifle scope, and if you all listening go to Secret Government Task Force about mystery drones in Colorado and Nebraska, no explanations really to date, and you scroll down, you will come to a series that starts with a photograph of the Angus rancher's site mark, and it is a rifle scope that he has been using mostly in 4.5 power, trying 9 power on some. But I told him to be consistent and that we needed a baseline pointed at Venus and run that so that we could see what would happen on a known quantity. And if you go down to his January 2nd, 2020 thermal rifle scope, there are 3 for comparison. And in the last one, the object that we compared with Venus, it is moving, almost like vibrating, and he had his scope on a tripod on the ground, so it was well established. Mm-hmm. And then on January 7th, 5 days later, he did the same exact thing, trying to make sure that everything was held down. And when you look at these videos, something really strange happens. The light, the drone, the whatever is in the sky that has been flashing and pulsing, which is what most people have been seeing, it does a swoop and turns in to 3 like triangle positions of white lights, totally unexpected. And then as you look at his crosshair in the rifle scope, you can see exactly how they ended up at the end of his video, starting out as flashing lights that he thought were a drone. And he said, what are we talking about here? How are they changing from one thing that is flashing to something that suddenly becomes 3? Well, he got that video, sent it to me, and on January 7th, later that night, his sister-in-law, she saw a light moving in the sky. She got her iPhone out, and then the video that is here is to compare with Alex's. It is the same kind of thing. It's a flashing light, and suddenly it does a swoop, and it ends up with morphing into this like a 3-leaf clover. And as you look at the floods of emails that I have been getting. There was a very interesting one that came today through the help of the rancher. And this is from a man who lives in the Nebraska and Colorado area. He writes, quote, I first saw these things this past summer. It was at around 11 p.m. or midnight, and they were flying all over the eastern Denver metro area. They were in groups of 7, and they would fly a strange pattern. They would hover, and then one would replace the next one, and then that one would move on to the next one in a huge oval pattern. I've seen them over Aurora as well. And now, if this is correct, this didn't start in mid-December. And if it didn't start in mid-December, what happened that suddenly we started getting headlines coming out of the Denver Post and other media about the appearance and the Facebook that began to be having to do with Colorado and Nebraska chasing drones? It opened up, and there started to be an increasing flood of people posting their own sightings, their own photographs, their own videos. And adding to this is the mystery of all of what's been being reported is generally flying at night. Sometimes people are seeing swarms of lights, some up to 20 or 30. There is a photograph that I have at Earth Files that came with a U.S. Air Force photo, like this is who took this photo.
Right.
So the drones are flying at night. They sometimes fly in these coordinated swarms that U.S. Air Force photo shows. They fly significant distances. Alex himself, he said in the one video that is at Earth Files, and you can hear, he said, I had that scope, my rifle scope, on one of these lights for 2 solid hours. Well, if the drones are as big as people have said, and some of them, they have been compared to an 8-sided stop sign, one of the big octocopters.
Right.
They can only stay in the air for a charge of about 19 minutes, and then they have to come down and be recharged. So what in the world is to a smart Angus rancher who says, I have seen one of these things through my scope. It looked like an 8-sided stop sign. I think it was one of those big octocopters. But, Linda, it stayed up for 2 hours. How is that possible? Why? What is this aerial thing? Well, then you get to, if you're flying a drone at night, whether it's a Big 8 or something else, by law for the FAA, they have 2 sets of records for commercial drone flyers. And one of them is called Part 107, and that is the one that is the most common. And if you're going to do any of those categories of night flying, coordinating with other drones, let's say in a swarm, or going long distances, you have to get waivers on your Part 107 if you are checking in with the FAA, which is what you're supposed to do.
Well, aren't you also, let me jump in, that's a really good point. You have to get certified by the FAA. And that's it. And there is software that is embedded, and until you get certified, those drones don't even fly. So they have the records, right? And to circumvent this, how would they get around the FAA's regulations? It seems like the FAA would know that there are swarms of drones flying in patterns, and everybody's in denial. I don't get that part. That's the whole reason to certify everybody, so this doesn't happen.
And this past weekend, Jeff Wise, who works for the War Zone, he did an excellent article, Who's Behind the Mystery Drone Swarms, and he was looking at this FAA permission. And he says that the FAA, which I also am very aware because I've tried to get some comments, the FAA is being silent. Homeland Security is being silent. I thought that probably one of the best comments that has come from anybody in authority was last Monday, a week ago, when they had the meeting. They met the FBI and Homeland Security and FAA and sheriffs and law enforcement, and they all met in Brush, Colorado, and the idea was that they were supposed to come up with a task force to try to get on top of what is happening. And one of the quotes that came before the meeting was from Captain Michael Yowell at the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, if that's in Hugo. And he said, quote, "We are desperately trying to figure out what is going on," close quote. I thought that was the most honest, heartfelt statement coming from somebody who is in authority from all the people who are asking for answers. And the fact that they said that they didn't want the public and they really didn't want the media at the January 6th meeting said a lot about the fact that they don't know what is going on. And after that meeting, something else really strange happened.
What happened?
There were announcements that said that local law enforcement agencies and the feds, Homeland Security, the FBI, the FAA, were creating a task force to unravel this Colorado drone mystery. And afterward, the Phillips County Sheriff's Office in Holyoke in Colorado, they posted a statement on Facebook that said that they were looking for help from the public specifically. And in fact, I have what they put out on Facebook right in front of me. And they said that they were hoping that they could get help from the public or any direction to have this task force that has been organized to look for the command vehicle. This is from their Facebook, meaning the command vehicle in control of all these mystery drones, and that we are looking for a closed box trailer with antennas or a large van that does not belong in the area. If you see anything that resembles this description, please call the Phillips County Sheriff's Office, and they gave a phone number. Now, it was only 2 days later. And here is the Phillips County Sheriff's Office. They put this out on Facebook. The information that the Phillips County Sheriff's Office previously posted requesting the public's assistance in locating command vehicles associated with the drone issue is no longer pertinent or relevant. The Phillips County Sheriff's Office is not the task force, and our jurisdiction does not extend past Phillips County, Colorado. We will no longer be making any statements or press releases about the drone incidents. What in the world happened between January 6th, when the headlines went out and were covered by CNN even about the fact that this task force was looking for a command vehicle, and 2 days later, on January 8th, the Denver Post and all of the media carried that Phillips was going public and saying that they were no longer looking for this. What happened, and who in the silent FAA and the silent Homeland Security offices, what do they know? Why are we not, in this time of national security concerns heightened by the Middle East, why is no one officially talking about the fact that in 2 states, in hundreds of eyewitness reports covering southeastern Colorado to northwestern Nebraska, why is nobody going on the record? It seemed like the Phillips County Sheriff's Office that they were trying to do the right thing. What interfered? And Jimmy, based on the emails that I have been receiving today from the 2 parts that I posted and did a special drone report on Wednesday, January 8th, people are saying that they are still seeing all kinds of activity in the sky. The rancher, Alex Peterson, he has sent me tonight fresh videos that people are contacting him because he was on my show and people know he's out looking. Mm-hmm. So what in the world do you think, if you go to speculations about military activities, there was one email that I received today from Alex Peterson who said, people around me are posting that in the Sydney and Potter area of Colorado, which if you go up to Sterling and then you go north, a little northeast, you come to Sydney and Potter in that area. Mm-hmm. And this is the quote, they are seeing massive amounts of military activity. Do you think that they are moving something for some reason? Well, so I put this out to you and your audience. If there's anybody listening who lives in the Sterling, Sydney, and Potter region, is there any quote-unquote massive military activity? What could be being hidden that seems to be big and coordinated behind all these individual sightings and headlines, Jimmy? It has the sense that there is something huge that is happening and that it's being deflected, totally deflected by things that are not what is happening. We're being deflected by what seems to be being hidden. And I don't know what that means.
Now, is there? Okay, I've got 100 questions. Let's get to a couple of basic ones. This part of the country, and certainly this area of Nebraska and Wyoming and Colorado, from Fort Collins up to Sydney and over, Stapleton, that whole area, it's covered with Minutemen missile silos. Right, well, and is that what my understanding?
No, once upon a time it was.
Well,
my point. Tried to straighten this out in my Earth files. I have a map in Part 2. It is the current map of some 400 LGM 30 Minuteman IIIs.
Right.
These are American nuclear missiles, and they are distributed. This big map shows that they are in underground silos at Francis E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming. They are at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Great Falls, Montana, and Minot Air Force Base in Minot, North Dakota.
Right.
Where they used to be in many other areas, sometimes not even known to the public, they were much more widespread once upon a time, and there were some in the Sterling, Colorado region. My understanding is today, unless we're being lied to on that as well, that they don't exist anymore, but the question came up that some of the first drone sightings in mid-December seemed to be in the Sterling area.
Right.
And that Washington and Yuma counties in Colorado, those sheriffs were the first ones dealing with the drone reports. And that's when people said, well, maybe it has something to do with the old patterns of where the missile silos were. But I think myself, I'm not certain that is logical, given the fact that the concentration of the missiles are only in a triangular pattern between northeastern Colorado up to the western side of Montana and up to the western side of North Dakota. And we're talking about the drone activity moved from Yuma and Washington counties in Colorado, moving easterly from the middle of December. And ever since the New Year's, it has seemingly been more and more in Nebraska. Now, some people have said, is it going to go out of the borders of Nebraska? Well, this morning, I got an email from somebody in Connecticut, and they said, I watched your show. I've been looking at your Earth files. I'm looking at the photographs. I'm looking at the videos. And Linda, I think that's what we've been seeing over Hartford, Connecticut this past summer. And suddenly, and they said in the email, but you know, it's not easy to call up anybody and say, are you seeing lights above your house? And that hit me for the first time, that a lot of things could be going on and people do not want to be criticized. They don't want to hear sarcasm about looking for lights in the sky. So maybe something else, this is a bigger, in terms of geophysical, geographic area, maybe it's been going on since the summer of 2019 in different places, and that the whole big reason for whatever is happening is being deflected by the headlines having to do with drones, drone operations, drones that people would be flying legally or illegally. But here is another period on that question. A lot of people were saying, having to do with F.E. Warren, that maybe they are responsible for putting out secret drones because of national security reasons, and they don't want anybody to know it's military. Well, the war zone took that to F.E. Warren, and they got a really strong denial saying we have nothing to do with this light activity. And you add all this up, and this is like one of those events that everybody thought was going to be solved each day, and now it's coming up to a month, and I don't see any answers. This could be something much bigger than just drones, lights, and something in the sky.
I heard reports right before showtime. I didn't get a chance to mention this to you, but I've heard about reports now coming in as far east as South Carolina.
Well, see, that would fit in to Hartford, Connecticut. It'd be right along the East Coast.
Very interesting. Now, how long, I want to continue this conversation after the break, but how long is it going to be, Linda, before these ranchers start to take this matter into their own hands and start plucking these things out of the sky? They've all got guns.
Well, I asked Alex Peterson, who is a very smart, very, very successful Angus rancher in Hagler. I said, what is the tone, what is the feeling among your fellow ranchers about this? And here is his answer. He said, everybody is afraid of anybody trying to shoot down one of these drones because that is you'll end up in jail. And that is one thing that the FAA has tried to make clear. If they don't have answers for what's in the sky, they have made it very clear anybody who tries to shoot down anything and then it lands, they will be jailed.
Even if it's over private property?
No, well, the rule is if you shoot down a drone, you're going to go to jail, and then you're going to be in court. So I would not advise anybody, and I know that the ranchers are saying that to each other, do not try to shoot down one of these. And then on the flip side is, even if the ranchers and residents are talking logically, don't try to shoot down one of these things, why is it that we are getting so much silence from everybody, from the sheriff's offices to the FAA to Homeland Security to the FBI? Why are we really getting nothing but silence? And that one captain's, we are desperately trying to find answers.
Yeah, and that Facebook post, by the way, to say to follow it up with "thank you," right? You look at that post and you're like, wait a minute, the public is wondering what is going on. You were on our side, now you're backing out and saying thank you.
Yeah.
Wait, who's working for
why?
who?
What happened? What a story that would be. That the Phillips Sheriff's Office, in just 48 hours, rescinded, turned everything around. What in the world is going on behind the scenes that none of us know anything about? And the public, of all of the people, they should be told straightforwardly. If there is some kind of concern and they are looking for something, they're looking for a missing nuke, they're looking for something that has fallen out of an airplane, the best thing they could ever have done a month ago is just tell, this is what it is. You're going to see these grid lines. We're searching, and whatever they would need to say about whether or not they thought that it was explosive or it was inert. But to have all of this silence and leaving only the people who are seeing the objects in the sky and all of these strange contradictory reports, one of which, silence. How many people I have now interviewed who said they thought that one of these lighted drones was 400, they estimate 400 feet above their place.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't hear anything. Now, I do think it is fair to say that for most people with normal hearing, standing in their yard, if there were a 8-sided drone, an octocopter, or even a smaller drone, 400 feet above, I think anybody with normal hearing would hear.
Oh, it's loud. It's loud. Linda, I got to take a break already. It's loud. Sounds like a helicopter. I mean, it's loud. Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Linda Moulton Howe, helping us kick off 2020 in style. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll get right back to the conversation after this short break. Stay with us on the Game Changer Network at KGRA, The Planet. This is Fade to Black. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Coming up next for us is the Conscious Life Expo, February 7th through the 10th, 2020, at the LAX Hilton. Tickets and info over at ConsciousLifeExpo.com. Linda Moulton Howe's going to be there. You excited? We're going to be breaking bread, Linda, in 3 weeks here in Los Angeles.
Great. Oh, I always love Conscious Life Expo. It's one of the most fun conferences.
It's, my trip that I enjoy so much about that, when you pull up, the second you walk into the Hilton, the electricity just flies right up your leg. It's nothing but good vibes.
Yeah. Yeah, people come running, and you are in great conversations instantly. And because it's vertical in the LAX Hilton Hotel, meaning you're staying up, but you're meeting everybody down on the floors for the conference and having dinner and everything, and it just is compressed fun. It is. And we really look forward to seeing you once again. And, of course, you're going to be, once again, helping me out with the Ancient Secrets panel this year, and it's a great way to kick off everything on Friday night. Cool. And I think that more and more people are beginning to realize, no matter what governments do or do not say, is that the ancient history of the Middle East has to do with full-blood extraterrestrials. And it's becoming more and more a subject that once upon a time people would veer from. And now I think the Anunnaki and the Sumerians and that entire swath that Zecharia Sitchin used to be one of the few on the planet addressing. Hundreds of magazine articles and books are beginning to come out, and I think it means ancient aliens. Our dear friend, von Däniken, he was the path breaker, making people look at the chariots of the gods were other intelligences working on this planet when humans were just an evolutionary species. And that's what makes Ancient Aliens so exciting. It is the truth. We just need to get the whole world up on that same concept.
Rita and I, this is a couple of months ago, we went back and watched Chariots of the Gods. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, as old as that is, right? 40 years ago, right? 45 years ago. And I'm watching it and I'm thinking to myself, this is as relevant today as anything out there. How groundbreaking. Yeah, I know. I mean, watch it today. Watch it today. Well, it's impactful.
Yeah, Jimmy, it's like the future caught up with the past.
I mean, it was so much fun watching it. And, I thought I was just going to go, okay, let's get, but it was just one thing after another. And it's a fresh reminder of how forward-thinking Eric was in not only writing the book, but putting that documentary together and the kind of legs that it has had. It is a tremendous film. Tremendously groundbreaking.
Yes. He was ahead of his time, and that's what I mean. The future caught up with the past. And he will go down in history as the groundbreaker on the big truth, that this is a planet in which other intelligences have manipulated DNA and already evolving primates to create a whole series of humanoids of which we are one, and that there is a huge, huge truth yet to unfold about what really is in this big universe that relates directly to what happens on this planet. That's the part. Until we get that big headline out there with government and political forces backing it up, we're not alone in this universe, and we deserve to be introduced to which are friendly, which are neutral, which are hostile, and the reasons why. And then baby humans will finally start growing up. And until that happens, until the headline, until this world moves to the truth, we are babies that are kind of abused by lies and denial.
Well, just like, not to go back to the drones, but using the drones right now as an example of real-time knowledge, we all know that the FAA and the government and the military knows exactly what's going on with those drones. They're just not telling us. And
I think so too, Jimmy. And here there's one really important point that we should add, and that is that on January 2nd, the New York Times, on the front page, did a story about all of this, and their headline was, "It's creepy. Unexplained drones swarm by night over prairie." And in this huge article that went from the front page to a whole nother page in the New York Times, there is a paragraph about what Alex Peterson, the Angus rancher, also told me. And that is that some people have been seeing, and I have a photograph, it's in my earthfiles.com report right now, I'm looking at it. It is a photograph of an all-white fixed-wing plane, sort of like a Cessna shape. And through binoculars, through Alex's rifle scope, all of it, there is not a single letter, number, pattern. There's nothing on this plane and others that people have seen. It's all white. That also violates FAA rules that there should be letter, number, identification on all civilian planes. So why would anything, whether it's military, whatever it is that is behind this, why would they almost flaunt in daylight, because these have been seen in daylight in the sun, why would somebody be flaunting all white Cessna fixed plane looking shapes in the blue skies of Colorado and Nebraska?
You know what would be the bigger issue? The bigger issue is if they don't know what's going on. Now we've got a problem, right? I mean, that's a problem.
That could be why they're so silent.
Right. I mean, seriously, in today's world of technology where everything is tracked, followed, monitored, listened to, we know that this is going on. And to have right in the middle of our country swarms of drones flying over ranch land in fixed patterns over a grid, and nobody apparently knows who, what, when, or where. That just doesn't make any sense to me. And if they truly don't know, then we do have a problem.
Right. And you're making a really excellent point. On the one hand, we're saying that they know, and that's why they are silent. But if it is the flip side, which is they don't know, then it's an even bigger issue, because if they don't know, what are we up against? And that's when it becomes really, really eerie.
Somebody sent me a video that they shot of 2 drones, and it's just like all the other videos that we've been watching. But I'm listening to everybody's reactions in this video, and I'm looking at it. I blew it up on my computer screens and looked at it really close and froze the frame. It's loud, you can hear it, but it is big. And the other part, and the one that I was looking at, you could see some type of fuselage, only for a second, going down the middle. But this thing is lit up all around, and it doesn't look like it's 6 feet or 8 feet. This looks like a pretty substantial sized drone. And then but it kind of had triangle lighting on it, like it was made to look like it was something else. And right behind it was another one. And I'm watching this, and it's the craziest, creepy thing to see. It looks, I don't know. It feels military to me. And the other thing is, Linda, I'm going to be honest. If they just came out and said, look, it's secret drone stuff. We're testing it. We've got Air Force bases in the area. That's all it is. Nothing to see here. You know what? Everybody would relax. Okay, yeah. All right, we get it. Go do your thing, military. Okay, all right. But to come at us with, we don't know what's going on, from the FBI and the FAA, the Air Force bases, and no civilians have been busted or nobody's come forward. We've got a mystery here, and the public needs to feel a little more secure than what we're being fed right now.
And silence is extremely peculiar in a time where national security is of such a big force. And I want you to hear something that Alex Peterson told me in my videotaped interview that I used on my January 8th Earth Files live stream.
Let me jump in real quick. Everybody, I posted Linda's links to the report and everything that you need to see. It's right there in Twitter. So there you go. Continue, Linda.
Great. Thank you, Jimmy. This is from Alex Peterson. He is the Angus rancher down in the far southwestern corner of Hagler, Nebraska. He said, do we, as a space force now, have technology that the average public has no clue about? But what I'm getting to is there is nobody who seems to find where these things take off. Nobody can seem to find out where they are landing. 2 hours in the air. They just show up. Are they being launched from 50,000 or 60,000 feet from, let's say, a floating aircraft carrier high up in the atmosphere, and they're coming down? Is that why nobody can seem to find out where they are launching from or landing? And then he said, I know there are millions and millions and billions of planets out there, and possibly there is other life, and they are here. The government doesn't know what to do. They would explain the secrecy to this whole thing. But the amount of drones and the amount of money that each one of those drones would cost to be able to, we're talking $50,000 to $150,000 drones, to be able to stay airborne, the number of hours to fly 500 or 600 mile circles. I mean, there isn't anything even closely available to the public right now, close quote. I thought that was one of the best summaries that I've heard.
Race just sent me this a couple of minutes ago. He said there are reports that the university there in Boulder has a permit to fly multiple drones from one central location. And I find that interesting if that is indeed the case, and I'm sure that they do. It's a university and they're doing this kind of research. But with all of this publicity, wouldn't the university come forward and say, hey, nothing to see here, it's just us?
Well, Boulder, Colorado, and Denver really are not where the, we'll say, the masses of drones that were swarming. That started, remember, in Yuma and Washington counties. Mm-hmm. And that was a month ago in middle December. And then the reports just kept moving like in waves going to the east into Nebraska. So even if the University of Colorado in Boulder had FAA okay certificates at 107 to fly drones for whatever they might be doing at the university, that wouldn't be the center point from which everybody started seeing the swarms.
Yeah, it goes all the way from Fort Collins nearly to Lincoln. It goes halfway across Nebraska in both directions, too. It covers this half of the state, north and south, and over half of the state, east and west. It's a huge, huge geographic chunk of land.
And everybody kind of that I had been interviewing, I did a lot of phone interviews with people that were in Nebraska and Colorado about a week and a half ago. And everybody kept expecting that it was going to either end or move over into Kansas and going further east. And it has not. So why is there a concentration in southeastern Colorado and southwestern Nebraska?
Now, ultimately, it's the million-dollar question, Linda. What do you think is going on?
Well, I sense in my gut that there is something that is way bigger than all of these little pieces, like a pointillisme painting. The pointillisme painting in France is made up of 1 million dots of different color. And you have to get back 100 feet, 50 feet in a museum to see pointillisme painting. Because when you're up close, all you see are the white, black, blue, green, yellow dots. But when you start backing off and you get off 50 or 60 or 100 feet, you can see these magnificent images. In a way, this whole swarm drone story has hit me as we're in a pointillisme. And right now, tonight, we're talking about the details, which would be the dots, with a feeling that if we could back up far enough, get more information, we would see the big picture that just seems to be right on the other side of everything we're saying. Is it related to new technology? Is it that the new Space Force wants to do something about grid search? For example, what if they didn't want to tell us that they were looking for missing nukes and that the missing nukes weren't going to be lying on the ground? Maybe they are doing something that would be deep ground penetrating radar, some new, brand new kind of technology, and that they are looking for things underground. That would be a whole new step. And there is something about those first comments that started surging in Colorado back in mid-December. People were using the term grid, that they were watching things that they thought were drones moving in straight lines. The New York Times talked about that in the January 2nd article. Straight lines. Later on, as we moved into Nebraska, Alex Peterson and some of his friends and colleagues, they haven't been talking about things flying a grid as much as, I'll give you a classic. Alex has seen this more than once. There would be maybe half a dozen objects, maybe at 400 feet. Definitely, he thought, not higher than 800 feet. And there's several of them, and each one is flashing red, green, and white lights, but not like a civilian fixed-wing airplane. That the rhythm of the flashing is very different from what people would be seeing if it were a Cessna or a Piper Cub or something. And that he became aware, as he was trying to focus in on some of these flashing smaller drones about 400 feet, he became aware that higher was a steady, solid red light. And he estimated it was at least 1,000 feet, as if it were above, and that's the question, controlling the lower drones?
Right.
Monitoring the lower drones. What's the relationship between the steady red lights that people have seen high and the lower that they think are drones, but with this strange pattern that is flashing differently but has the same color almost? And he raised that. He said it's almost like something is mimicking, trying to camouflage itself as what we would think of as a normal civilian small plane.
That's what I saw. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah. That's what I saw. Yes.
Yeah.
And what
but
about
flashing too fast?
And before we hit this break, I've also heard and read many reports from eyewitnesses saying that they would watch a couple, maybe three, that would stay confined in a certain theater, right? And that they were staying inside of this grid pattern while other groups were in another area, but they wouldn't go outside of that area. And that, to talk about creepy, it's very organized.
Well, and it means that something is programmed. They're AI.
Right.
That they are very programmed. And then if you add the possibility that they are a new technology that has the ability to move in grid patterns, moving as a group under the brain of something like the steady red light, and that what they are looking for, and that they have a technology for deep ground penetrating radar. This would mean that they could go over the state of Colorado and Nebraska looking for a nuke that's underground or anything that's underground in a way that we've never heard of before. Something like that might be happening. It starts feeling to me a little closer to this sense, this gut sense, that something much bigger is what's behind all of this. But we're deflected by all the pointillismo dots that are what we see and hear and we're concentrating on, and they are a symptom of whatever it is that's going on. And you know, Jimmy, if this man who sent me this email talking about that he was seeing these kinds of things in the summer in Colorado, what would it mean that had been going on from the summer to mid-December without anybody having any awareness until December?
And the part that freaks me out just a little bit, I mean, a lot of it freaks me out, but when you have this kind of media coverage and public awareness now out in front, you would think that would force and tip the hand of the government and those agencies to come clean, and they are ignoring the media coverage and the public's outrage about what's going on, and that's pretty frightening. That's Big Brother stuff right there.
Well, it is like flaunting in our face,
right?
That no matter how many meetings and agencies are bringing themselves together to say that they're going to have a task force that's going to solve this, and then they end up contradicting that by rescinding everything that they had said, leaving to me the sense that they thought they were going to be able to do X, and within 48 hours, it had become clear to everyone that they were not going to be able to do X. So what is it that they're coping with, and that's what you and I and a bunch of us, that's what I'm trying to find out. I put out on my Wednesday, January 8th, Earth Files live stream, I put out a request to anybody who would be in the whistleblower category to communicate privately, confidentially, through mail or Proton Mail or FedEx if they have any information, and I would like to extend the same thing on Fade to Black, that if there's anybody listening who has any hard information, they can get it to me, to Linda Moulton Howe. You can go to my earthfiles.com site and know that you can establish communication with me through earthfiles@earthfiles.com, my normal email, but then we can switch to Proton Mail or FedEx or hard mail, given the fact that in this world now, in the United States or anywhere we are, phones might as well be megaphones to governments and agencies.
Yes. No doubt about it. Let's take our break right here. Linda Moulton Howe. Great conversation. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We come back. We got to go ancient. We got to get into the ancient stuff. And we will do that with Linda right after this short break. Stay with us on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. This is Fade to Black. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Linda on Twitter, very simple, at Earth Files. And if you've ever missed a show like this one live, you can subscribe to our podcast. It is just $2 per month. Go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on that podcast banner. We have over 1,160 archive shows right there for just $2 per month. And also you can head over to earthfiles.com too and join Linda and subscribe over there and get all of her excellent reporting. Going back, I don't know, Linda, how many years of reports do you have over at Earth Files?
About 3,000 now in depth, and those 3,000 represent something like 60,000 images, maps, illustrations, and I use it so much in my work, going back into the last, well, it's 1998 to 2020 now, and that I find myself remembering, oh, I interviewed that scientist, and I remember, and then I go and I do a search, and I find that report and that whole huge depth, and a lot of my reports have MP3s that are embedded of all of the radio broadcasts I have done with Art and with George on Coast to Coast and Dreamland and work that I have done. So there's a lot of embedded audio, and it becomes so valuable. It is now for me like a living archive of my own work. It's amazing.
I can't believe that much time has gone by. It's a blur to me. I wanted to ask you this. We were talking about the blur of 2019. But in my opening rant tonight, I spoke about this, and I've been holding off on this, Linda, for a while now. But check this out. We all know about the Great Pyramid, and it was built, between 2580 and 2560 BC, and the 2.5 million stone blocks, blah, blah, blah. We've all heard that over and over again. But what most people don't realize is that Khafre and Khufu, those two pyramids, were built at the exact same time. And it's not 2.5 million blocks; it's 5 million blocks, right?
Right.
And that's the part that nobody wants us to know, because it's hard enough to digest that pyramid was built in 20 years with 2.5 million blocks. But if we were now told that it was 2 pyramids and it was 5 million blocks and it was this, nobody would buy into it. And if the orthodoxy, if organized archaeology and historians and Egyptologists don't want to talk about it, what else are they holding back? Right? I mean, isn't that, what else do we deduce from it?
Well, the truth is threatening to careers that have been locked in by being on a planet for 5,000 years. We have been lied to by power brokers, and that all of the history and the so-called ancient history and the way we have interpreted the evolution of humans and what happened in Egypt and the Middle East, all of it has been concocted. And remember John Anthony West, God bless his soul wherever he is now in all of the vast dimensions. It was at Contact in the Desert about 5 years ago. It was about a year before he passed. And he and Robert Schoch and I had spent a lot of time talking about what really is the true age of the Sphinx. Because when they broke ground, John Anthony West and Robert Schoch, all the way back in the early 90s, they held a press conference, I think it was in New York, made the press everywhere, that they had done a trip so that Robert Schoch, Yale PhD in geology, could examine what John Anthony West had always said was water weathering on the Sphinx. And Robert Schoch agreed and estimated at that time, back in the early 90s, that the water weathering meant that the Sphinx must be about 14,000 years old. And that was more than Göbekli Tepe. That was twice what had been the accepted age, right? Mm-hmm. That 5,000 years ago is when civilization just suddenly popped out in humanity. And that John and Robert Schoch, they both said, it makes no sense. And the water weathering on the Sphinx, when they did history and went back to when there would be patterns of Nile flooding and rain, they found only one time period that could possibly match what they were calculating, and it was 14,000 years ago. Well, at Contact 4 or 5 years ago, John came up to me, and he took a hold of my arm, and he looked and he said, you know what? Bob and I, Robert Schoch and I, have come to the conclusion that the Sphinx is at least 40,000 years old. Now, so that was 4 or 5 years ago. In 2018, August, is when I was able to do the videotaping with the Spartan 1 and Spartan 2 whistleblowers. One retired as a commander Navy SEAL and has been to Antarctica and has walked these long halls and been in these 62-acre rooms. And he had missions not only in Antarctica but with another one in Egypt, where often our Navy SEALs are used to go in and let's say it's a scientist, and they will quote-unquote extract a scientist from a mission, whether it's in Egypt or Antarctica or wherever it is. And on that one particular mission that was involved with Egypt, he was talking with an archaeologist as a Navy SEAL, and that the archaeologist said to him, and he said to me when I was doing the interview, that archaeologist said that the Sphinx is at least 40,000 years old, 35,000 to 40,000 years. Right there are beginning to emerge cracks in the old, we'll call them strict rules, that humanity was not civilized until 5,000 years ago. And that the preceding civilizations that if Eric were talking with us right now, he would say the chariots of the gods are the extraterrestrials who have been interacting with this planet long before Homo sapiens sapien, this current model, and that whether they were Anunnaki from Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, which is one of the hypotheses, that they had come here maybe 1 million years ago, 2 million years ago, or as one of the most important discussions that I ever had with anybody who proved to me they had worked for the government, they had worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency, and wanted to talk with me as he was retiring, and said to me this quote that I've never forgotten. Linda, our government has proof that 3 competing, in conflict, civilizations from other places in the Milky Way galaxy have been terraforming and harvesting genetic material from this planet that they consider to be a laboratory for at least 270 million years. Now, assuming that that is a correct statement, and I do think that it is, but how do we prove it until the government stopped lying? If it is 270 million years that 3 competing extraterrestrial civilizations have competed for genetic harvest, have competed to extract gold and other rare metals from the earth through beam technology that they can do by molecular extraction. If all of that has been the big truth, and we've all been kept in the dark on purpose for reasons that are not exactly clear, then 270 million years. Now you have to come down to where? 45,000 over 270 million for the consciousness of Homo sapiens sapien, our current model? Or if you want to go back to Homo erectus, the first primate that stood up, allegedly Homo erectus was in South Africa or Africa, 2 million. So somewhere between 45,000 years ago when Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon Homo sapiens sapien did a crossfade with each other, 2 million Homo erectus with Denisovans and so many others in between. Put that fraction in your mind or on a piece of paper. Write 2 million over 270 million as a fraction.
Right.
And that, to me, brings into tight, clear focus. We humans, Homo sapiens sapien, we don't have even the thinnest idea of everything that happened on this planet before our particular species became conscious, let alone Homo erectus, a mammal in which the briefing paper that I was shown at Kirtland Air Force Base in 1983 said, these extraterrestrial biological entities manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapien. And all questions and mysteries about the evolution of Homo sapien on this planet have been answered, and this project is closed. And the name of that project in that briefing paper that I was shown was Project Garnet, all caps, Garnet. I was not to see those 2 words put together for a decade or so after that meeting at Kirtland, but I never forgot, because my birthday is in January and my birthstone was Garnet. And when I read Project Garnet, all questions and mysteries about the evolution of Homo sapien have been answered, I remembered it was Project Garnet. Later on, at least a decade or so later, I was to learn that various projects have been floated, which is the way counter-intel and intel work. You put out a bunch of pro words. You put out a bunch of project names, and then everybody gets in a muddle. You can put out truth, but you can't do chain of custody. You can't trace back a name to the original file, and they do that on purpose, as a cloud, as a fog. Well, later on, I was to find what I think was given a document that showed that particular project about studying the evolution of Homo sapien and relating it to all of the mysteries having been answered because extraterrestrials made humanity, that was Project Garnet. So you do get reinforcements sometimes in this wicked landscape of razor blades trying to always keep us from the truth. But I have not one question, Jimmy, that those statements that I read on April 9th, 1983 at Kirtland Air Force Base when I was working on that home box office documentary, that those were true. And that I am not offended. I'm not scared. It doesn't make me want to fall down on the floor to face what seems like a logical statement that other advanced intelligences in this evolving universe would end up in this little arm in the Milky Way galaxy where there was this magnificent planet that probably is quite unique, with 2/3 of it in deep ocean, perfect laboratory for all kinds of life experiments, and that would be the big box. And another thing that I was told in the last 10 years is that our government is puzzled about the fact that they know, and that must be because they've had interstellar travel since the 70s, that they know that other planets around other suns in other solar systems also have pyramids, and that the implication is that there have been pyramids built on tremendous numbers of planets by a very advanced civilization. Where is that civilization today?
And why this is what is so puzzling to me. What is the big deal? Right? I mean, right. What is the big deal? Just talk about it. Let's have a conversation. Let's look at what's the truth. Right. What's the big deal? Truth. What's the big deal? Why?
Well, I'll tell you what the biggest argument that has been given is that it would upend religions. God would be replaced by extraterrestrial biological entities, and that was the truth. And I can say from living a life in which the evolution from being a child and interactions that I have had with blazing white crosses that have saved my life, that I am convinced that there is a divine field, that's what I call it, and that all matter universes, I don't care if they're infinite, that they are an evolution out of the divine field, and that if you have a soul, which I think humanity does, that soul can call out and interact with that divine field. And once you feel that and live it, which I have in my life, I am here because of it. I have been protected. I have literally gone from a mortal situation to being alive because of this interaction and these blazing white crosses that have saved me.
Right.
Then the extraterrestrial biological entities, I don't care if there are a billion, trillion civilizations in this universe and that there's an infinite number of universes and dimensions and timelines. They all have a relationship, I think, of source in what I call the divine field. And that, to me, is the real relationship between that force, that animus that is in each human body container, is in my fluffy and chocolate cats. It is in life. That's what life is about, this animation of a field, of a force that we call soul. And that whether or not we ended up in the container bodies that we have right now because of genetic manipulation by extraterrestrial biological entities experimenting on this planet and many others. It doesn't matter what the spark was that turned into this genetic form that became humanity. The part to me that is really important and that we must never lose sight of is that there is a relationship to a divine field, to all souls in all matter. And once you live that, feel it, know it, you don't need a box religion. And that's where the old past was, boxes of religions. And that's why, to me, that argument that the governments say, you can't tell anybody the truth because civilization will collapse, religions will fall apart, the stock market will fall apart. If we know and learn the whole truth, as I have in my life, something wanted me to have this, I guess, this evolutionary insight and this feeling of a tremendous connection to a divine field, and that I would wish this for all of humanity, and that we don't need boxed names. When you look at how many wars in the last 5,000 to 10,000 years have been fought on this planet over whose God is superior to another, it puts it into perspective for me.
That's right.
That we should not be fighting each other or warring with each other over some kind of manipulated boxes when every single one of us should have one common denominator, our souls and the relationship of the souls to the divine field.
Fighting over imaginary borders, right? And see, yeah. and this is the thing, and this is the truth. This is the bottom line. The knowledge of that we are not alone in our galaxy or in the universe is exactly the pressure relief valve that we need to flip on this planet. It would alleviate everything, and we would have a reason to live. We would have a reason to clean up this planet, Linda. We would have a reason to make friends. We would have a hope for the future. You want to burn this planet down, tell everybody we're alone.
Jimmy, can you and your audience right now feel the kind of pain and nausea that maybe between 500 million and 1 billion creatures in Australia have died?
I know. It kills me.
The first time I saw that headline come across, and it was one scientist said that he was estimating 1 billion, I just suddenly felt like I wanted to vomit.
Yes.
There is something about the fact that life, recognizing other life, should cherish it, not want to kill it.
That's right.
And that what we are doing to the whole planet, if we don't get on top of the carbon dioxide and methane, then we are going to have not just Australia burning up, we already have California going through terrible periods and other parts, that just out of sheer love for other life, for all of the cats, all of the creatures, for humans to say, we are going to do everything we can to just help life survive on this planet, and not everything needs to come down to money and profit and power brokers.
I saw when I first saw the image that NASA put out of Australia, and I'm looking at the entire country is glowing orange.
I know.
I could not believe
I
it.
know.
Tied my stomach up in knots.
And I received some emails from some people in Australia who like to come to my Earth Files live stream on Wednesday nights. And one of the persons said, they were down there where, remember when everybody had to get to the beach just to save their lives? Whether they had clothes, food, or water ever, that was the only thing, the strip of beach, and the fire was coming right up to the sand. And one of the emails said, I was standing on the porch of my house looking at all of the red down at the beach and realizing I did not know how, but all of those people on the beach were going to need as much help as they could get because all they had was each other. They had nothing else, just the strip of sand.
That was incredible. Our thoughts and prayers are with everybody in Australia, and I can only hope that everything is going to take the turn that it needs to take. But the creatures, the wildlife, humans, we can jump in a car and make a break for it. We have a glimmer of hope. They don't. They don't know what's going on.
And Jimmy, and one more thought from an astronaut. I used to go to the Lunar and Planetary Conference down in Houston just about every year, and I heard one of the astronauts do a keynote one time, probably back about 18 years ago, but it means he was thinking and NASA was thinking and they were all thinking about this. And the whole keynote was, we must get a base on the moon. We must work to get a base on Mars because Earth is an unstable planet, as beautiful and wondrous as it is, and it has been a icy snowball at least 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. It goes through patterns of dramatic temperature changes and all kinds of things, and that humans have to now see that getting to Mars, however it's going to be done, getting a base on the moon, moving out further, maybe the secret Space Force that allegedly has been there since the 70s in interstellar trade, that humanity will survive if we can get ourselves based beyond the Earth. But Earth is going to take a whole new relationship between humans going forward, or humanity will not survive. It's not a dramatic statement. It is a statement of fact. We're coming up to 10 billion people estimated in another 10 or 15 years. The Earth right now is showing us with fires and floods and seismic events. We can't go another 10 to 15 years and get to 10 billion people and survive if we don't change our entire relationship with the Earth and waste and what we're doing for energy and how we cohabit with this planet. And that right now, that may be one of the big consciousness changes that begins to really take hold in this new year. I hope so. And I honor the girl over in is it Finland, and her peers, the young teenagers of this planet who are everywhere. They are speaking out that we must help this Earth to help us to survive.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, Linda Moulton Howe. Now, we started to get there, and we're going to do it when we come back. We're going to talk about physics, and are we living in a simulation? That's right. Linda Moulton Howe, this is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. You can become an official Fadernaut by going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. Click right there. Get yourself one of those autographed Fade to Black hats. Linda Moulton Howe's got an autographed Fade to Black hat. She wears it all the time. I've seen her do it. Linda, Now, this is the thing. When I talk to physicists, I've had many on this show, or I listen to physicists like Brian Greene or Sean Carroll. We're going to have Sean on the show. Very excited about that. And you listen to what they are looking at. One, they've got the equations, they've got the math, and they're slowly figuring things out, and they're cool with that. What now the research, the one question mark for them is consciousness, our soul. Where the heck does that come from? And can that be turned into an equation, by the way? So, because that would certainly fill a lot of holes in the puzzle. But they know that there is something else going on here. And what makes the transition, from atoms that everything is built on in this universe, to us being able to think and talk like you and I are doing right now on this show. What is consciousness? And then they push it one step further, which is the multi-world theory, multiple dimensions, parallel worlds, entanglement, and what is involved with that. And it may sound like science fiction, but this is where the research is going. Now, I'm not suggesting something divine, but I'm definitely not suggesting that it's all by chance and that it's just the way things were and we just are. I'm not going there. And that's where the simulation or multi-world idea starts to come into play, that we may be living in a simulation. Are you okay with that?
Yes, and I think that it is almost logical in a strange way. In December, just about 2 weeks ago, I reposted a series that I did, Is Our Universe Also a 3D Hologram? And one of the quotes at the top of part 1 is by a man named Jason Paget. He is co-author of a book from a few years ago called Struck by Genius. And the short story is that he had been at a karaoke club somewhere, and out in the parking lot. I'm seeing it right now. It was December 13th, 2002, and he had walked out of the karaoke club, and some people, men who were there in Tacoma, Washington, beat him up. And they beat him up so badly, and including his head, that his skull and his brain were damaged. When he finally woke up, and I did an interview with him, and I asked him about that moment, that he became conscious, and he'd been in the hospital for quite a while, that when he opened his eyes for the first time, everything around him, he said, looked like moving film strips of images inside of frames. And then he began to see patterns after pattern after pattern, and they were in different colors. And then he realized that he was seeing these patterns, which we would call fractals, in everything. No matter what he was looking at, it was as if he was seeing somehow the energy pattern that everything that was matter was made up of. And he said this very interesting sentence to me that I put at the top of my December 27th, 2019 report, Is Our Universe Also a 3D Hologram? And he said, I learned it doesn't seem like the universe cares so much about fairness as it does care that all things that can happen do. And there are mathematical formulas and hypotheses that have been emerging, like the block universe, in which everything that has ever happened, could ever happen from through infinity is in the block universe. It's a whole other concept that's being taught down in the Institute of Time that is in Australia. They have an Institute of Time. Well, when you get into these kinds of discussions and talking with Jason Padgett about how he sees things since his brain was hurt, and that it's always fractals, we got into a discussion about this concept that's been around since Bud Hopkins' abductee, human abductee, Michael Talbot, released a book in the early 90s called Our Holographic Universe.
That's right.
And it was only within a year and a half after Michael Talbot had that book published that he died. And because he had died on a conference airline trip, Bud Hopkins was sitting next to me, and the book had become a sensation. And Bud said, I want to tell you something. He said, Michael Talbot has been one of my abductees that I have worked with missing time and all, and he told me that his book, Our Holographic Universe, was like a big download from the ETs that Michael Talbot was dealing with when he was alive, and that our universe is a hologram. And I remember at the time being confused by that, not understanding what that meant. Well, in the last 4 or 5 years, in discussions with physicists who are working on these kinds of projects, there was one, I talked with some scientists who were at the University of Southampton in the UK, University of Waterloo and in Canada. They were working together with Italian scientists, all three countries, on this question of, is there substantial evidence that we're living in a holographic universe? And they published a paper in January 30th of 2017, 2 years ago, in which they are putting forth that they think that there is quite a bit of evidence that we are. Well, if this is a holographic universe, everybody seems to agree you could not have the projector of the hologram inside the universe. It must be outside and likely in a completely different dimension. And when you get to those sentences, you say, well, if this is a universe that is projected from another dimension, and that there are mathematics in papers that are now being done that seem to be pointing in that direction, what would be in another dimension projecting the hologram that is our universe? How, why, who? Is it one and the same as our discussion before the break about the divine field?
Right.
Or is it like Jerry Wills? He is a man, his wife is Kathy. They have been taking groups down to Peru for 2-3 decades. The year they got married, and he was there. This is another series that I have at Earth Files about Jerry Wills and his incredible interactions with a blonde ET. And the blonde ET may or may not have been responsible for what happened to Jerry in Peru. But the short form is that there was a huge red rock wall that had a carved door, and he was always fascinated by why would there be a carved door in red rock in Peru. And he met a shaman who told him that through centuries, the Incas had always talked about the gods or the other visitors that would periodically come from inside the rock out through the big carved door. And that there was also a way that you could learn, and the shaman told Jerry he could teach him, how you could stand at the door or kneel at the rock door and get in. And Jerry Wills studied it, and he said it was a frequency, and he's never given out the frequency, but I understand the concept. And Jerry, on this day with his new bride, watching Kathy was watching and saw her husband disappear into the rock. Jerry's point of view was that he was kneeling, trying to concentrate on this very specific frequency that the shaman had given him about moving into the door, that other dimensionals come through the rock out into the earth. What happened is that Jerry found himself moving rapidly in what he said was like being inside of a pearl, something that was spherical, but not a craft, and that he ends up moving through the universe at a very great speed. And then he ends up on an all-white, what do you want to call it, a planet, something. And Jerry feels like that he is surrounded by something observing, and he can't see it. He doesn't know what it is, and then a voice begins to speak in his mind, outside of him. And the voice, the voice asks, "Where did you come from?" And Jerry says, "From Earth." And this voice says, "Oh, Earth. Oh, yes. We know it well. We are the ones who experimented with creating a universe that you are now in."
Wow.
And takes Jerry somehow. Jerry is still not sure. Was he in his mind the whole time, or was he physically being transported to see from another point of view the universe that we live in and we think is 13.8 billion light years? And the voice said, "We wanted to do an experiment to see if we could find the original source of life." What a concept. That if could we find the original source of life? And we made your universe. And he said, the problem is we were going to make it of a certain finite size so that we could experiment with it. But we have never been able to stop its growing, and you're in the universe that we made to find how does life begin. Well, Jerry said, "I'm reporting to you, Linda, exactly what I remember." And in the end, whatever the reality of it is, I think about Jerry Will's experience in Peru at that rock door and going out probably 2-3 times a week. And then the reason is more and more things like all these papers that keep coming forth, that there's more and more evidence that we're in a holographic universe. And suddenly, I remember one day, I think it was last summer, it just hit me. It was like my mind just did some kind of like I walked into another dimension in my own mind, feeling the truth that we are like in a video game and we are the video players. And it is a metaphor like the Matrix, the Keanu Reeves Matrix, that the reality of this universe could very well be that we are the players in a video game. Does that make the discussion about a divine field and souls any less?
No, it strengthens it.
Not at all.
It does the opposite.
Yes, it means exactly. Thank you. It means that our consciousness, which is where you started this, our consciousness is a source link to all that has ever experimented, that continues to evolve, that infinity, we are related to it, and that consciousness where everything at any given moment is connected. That's how remote viewers can go to the ends of the universe or go to Jupiter. And that if we were all taught that we had the ability in very special brains to be able to relate to infinity, that we have a soul that is eternal and was made eternally in this holographic universe. I think that everybody would, exactly as you said, there would be more reason to get up in the morning and to live life without abuse to ourselves and to others, and that we would feel like we were somehow all part of some kind of a grand design.
Right.
A grand design that is real, and that Jason Padgett being beaten up by thugs outside of a karaoke club and waking up in a hospital and never, ever again being able to see anything without seeing the fractal patterns of the energy from the atomic molecular level up. It's like he's like a grace note given to all of us. He is seeing the reality, and we are living the video players in the video game. And I find that exciting. I don't find that as being anything that would be destructive to the history or religions or philosophy of our planet. That it is time that we grow up and learn exactly what this universe is.
What I find so interesting is when we, and I'm going to make this quick because I want your response and I'm looking at the clock, is when we talk about entanglement, and I've talked to physicists about this, where communication with entanglement, it's just one atom at a time. It's, the rotation of one, and it could be entangled with something on the other side of the universe, but it's a small, tiny bit of information. They got it all wrong. If an advanced species, an advanced civilization, not only understands physics and entanglement, but the ability to entangle their brain with mine, all of the atoms, right, of their brain, right, with all of the atoms in my brain, now we have not only a communication, but a network that would entangle the entire universe. And the ability to do that is not only communication, but sharing of information and visions of and downloads of and all that would encompass. And that's physics says, and Einstein, all the way back, that entanglement is real. It has been proven and published within the last month about entanglement. But isn't that the answer to everything?
I wrote a prologue in my Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2. It's my third of 4 books. And I wrote the prologue because it was the single most profound event in my life when I was about 21 years old. And I was in the mountains, and I have talked about this at my Earth Files YouTube broadcast, and it is in my book, but it is worth tying that I had this extraordinary experience of seeing and feeling everything in a mountain, the trees, the flowers, everything around me turned into pulsing orchid and white light.
How old were you?
I was about 20, 21, somewhere right there.
Okay.
And that as this unfolded, was seeing everything in pulsing light, and then having this feeling of warm jello. It wasn't me. It wasn't my muscles or my nerves that did this. It was something outside me, but that I think is entanglement. It's what I'm heading for. This warm jello feeling as I stood there in complete and total awe on a path on this mountain with everything pulsing orchid white light. And this warm jello lifted up my own hands. I was totally conscious. I was totally aware, but it was like having multiple consciousness all at the same time. entangled with the light. And as my hands came up, being pulled up or pushed up gently by this warm jello feeling, I'm looking at my own hands in front of my eyes, and this thought voice that's been with me since I was a child said, "You are one with the light. The light is one with you, and you are in the hands of God forever." And then all of the pulsing light, slowly, like a rheostat, the brightness of it started going down like on a count of 10 as I'm standing there looking at my eyes, or looking at my hands with my eyes, with those words in my mind. And this thought voice also further said, basically, this is the truth. This is what you are, the earth is, the universe, this pulsing light. Later on, I would have an experience like it was only about 5 or 7 years ago, where I had always had meditation, and I had always loved being out in the sun, where most people don't like being in the sun. I love being in the sun. I've always felt energized by it. And on this one particular morning, when I pulled a shade up and the sun came in on me, it felt suddenly again like that pressure, like that warm jello pressure all the way back in the Idaho mountains. But this was here in Albuquerque in my house pulling up a shade. And as I felt that, it was two things happened simultaneously. I felt hugged, literally hugged by the light. It was the most wonderful agape love, oh my Lord, and simultaneously that thought voice, think entangling your soul, your molecules, your atoms, think entangling all of you in this, right at this moment, which is the sunlight coming through the window, which is entangling the photons. And Jimmy, it was absolutely one of the most glorious things outside of Idaho was glorious. This hug by the light was glorious. And I have now been able to have that sort of dialogue or that feeling that when I open up the shade every morning, I have that feeling of the hug and the entanglement. And I think that if we humans could be one and we were taught how to entangle, how to be hugged by light, that how could we ever kill each other? How could we ever hate each other? And that there is something that seems to be moving us to become aware of the holographic universe, to become aware that there is a profound relationship that each of us can have with light, and that with light you begin to feel something pushing your very soul. And once you begin to do that, all of the petty stuff seems to fall away, and that there is a kind of gloriousness about being alive.
Physicists, I think this is where we're at right now, in that physicists have been trying to organize all that there is into math so we can understand, right? That has been the goal, to just get this down so we can make sense of everything and we can start to move forward. And in that pragmatic black and white world of equations, they are finding out as they move along that this is not something that was created by lightning, you know, on a bunch of amino acids on a crystal in a riverbank, right? And that DNA just appeared. that they are now taking a very hard look to what this electronic universe and you just brought up protons, right, and light.
Photons.
Right. Yeah,
photons are the particles of light, and Jimmy, this is what do you call it? The magic of the universe.
That's right.
That if we entangle photons, we could have instantaneous communication from one end of the universe to another, which is what the Chinese are now doing with entangled photons on the moon.
That's right.
They have the largest. Okay, and what does that mean? Because the other side of many things that we hear is Einstein said that there was a limit to the speed of light, 186,000 miles a second, and it takes 8 minutes to get light from the Earth to Mars, and so when we finally have a base there, we're going to have an 8-minute delay on getting news from Mars, but we will be getting it eventually. Well, if we could get into this entanglement with photons, this magical, incredible ingredient of this universe, we could have instantaneous communication and maybe eventually instantaneous entangled travel. That's where we might get into portals. But that entanglement of photons seems like a completely different physics from the 186,000 miles a second as a law. Entanglement is outside of that speed of light. It's instantaneous.
It's instantaneous, and there is no question, and Linda, and for the entire audience listening to me, I'm about to preach, but this is the reality of it. Every star above our heads, every star in the Milky Way, every star in every galaxy, every star everywhere has a friggin' planet. There are 200 billion Earth-like planets in the Milky Way. 200 billion. The amount of life, infinite. It's infinite. It's infinite. But those species that are traveling 1,000 light years away from their home planet are not waiting 2,000 years for a return phone call. It doesn't work that way, Linda. It just doesn't.
And I think it's very clear from whistleblowers who know that we have already been moving point to point. We do have physics that is, whether it's in collaboration with ETs, the truth is that we do have scientists, we do have military people who have moved point to point, which means portal to portal. It is where you are manipulating magnetic fields and that you could go from, as Spartan 1 says in my documentary, you can walk in a step from Gakono, Alaska to a place in Hawaii because they've been able to make those portals. And the same thing would apply going out into the Milky Way galaxy, that the non-humans are using portal technology to move. They're not doing Euclidean geometry, traveling 1 billion light years for 1 billion years. And this is where the excitement for me, if we could get past all the geopolitical power broker stuff, if we could get past that money is the most important thing in the universe, and it's not, that life and being able to live your heart and your soul is the most important thing, we could end up possibly on an earth in which a vast number of people would know joy. What a concept, right?
Well,
humans getting up and knowing joy.
The answer, I said this it's probably a few years ago now, a couple of years ago, probably after I talked to you and I plagiarized. But enough of that. Is this, Linda, if there was one thing that would alleviate the pressure on this planet, is to get together, and I'm not talking about some kumbaya thing. I'm not going there. But to get together and build and have a goal, build an interstellar starship out in orbit, get the thing built, throw a few thousand people on it, and take off. That's a goal. It's a goal. It would unite the planet. Everybody would come together and understand that this is our next stage in evolution. This is what we have to do. And if that happens...
Add one more lens on this, that I think we've already been doing that in collaboration with friendly ETs since the 70s. More than one source has told me that we have been in interstellar trade, that there have been humans who have gone on these big interstellar missions, so that means that we have had humans go to other parts of the Milky Way galaxy. That doesn't surprise me at all.
But what I'm saying is go public. Go public with this and settle this planet down. I mean, you wouldn't want to go to war if you know that we were doing that. And that's my point. I think that would just unify the planet.
Yeah, I just would like all of the power brokers and geopolitical systems to finally tell all of the truth, and that we would move from a planet that has been lied to and is lying and manipulated to one in which everybody was getting the truth, and that when we went out into space, that it was a mission on behalf of humanity and the Earth to get a backup planet, and it might be one that's within the 19 yellow suns, sort of similar to our sun, between here and Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, which is about 40 light years. And that if we felt like we were on a planet in which there wasn't China and Russia and the United States and the Koreas and all against each other, what would it be like in which we weren't worrying about attacks or attacking at a geopolitical level on Earth, that everything was going to get us as a world out into space for humans to survive.
Do you feel that it is in our DNA, something that we could fix, of course, but do you think it's in our DNA to eventually have conflict? Do you remember in Arthur C. Clarke's book in the Rama series, where they put, I forget the number, but it's like 5,000 humans on this ship, and they take off, right? Leave the solar system. And all is good in the beginning. But eventually we have black markets, we have trades, we have gangs, we have struggles for leadership. And it was the micro version of the macro Earth. Right? That no matter what, inevitably, we're going to go down that road. Do you think we would take it to another planet where it wouldn't be perfect, that it's just in our DNA to have conflict?
I think you are hitting something that is a truth, that we were manipulated, that sentence in that document said extraterrestrial biological entities manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create this series of humans. And I think that there is something in the human DNA that's territorial, that competes, and that all of those ingredients, they work two sides of the street. Some of it is what gives people the energy and the happiness to get out into the world and make things and build things and do things and have goals. And then there is that other part of that same energy, which is self-destructive. And they kind of are on two sides of the same coin. So you're making a really good point. And then the next thing is, humans can learn and they can grow and they can evolve, and that maybe that is where we ultimately are headed if we're going to survive, is entanglement with light.
In the new TV series Mars, which is excellent, I'm waiting for season 3 now. It touches upon everything that we are talking about here, in that we establish a colony on Mars, and there was a second colony on Mars, and the two of them are now, one controls water, one has electricity. They're sharing it, but eventually, what happens? Right? Power struggle, conflict, and we're just talking about a few thousand people on Mars. The next thing you know, it's exactly what went down between Egypt and Jerusalem and Syria. All of the classic conflicts throughout time, Rome, are now happening on Mars. Is there a way, like with CRISPR technology, right, to go in and do the snip on the angst genes, right, the conflict genes?
See, this is one of the most difficult subjects in the history of the world. It's called eugenics. The concept that you would then, somebody, the they, would say, we need humans that are all like this.
Right.
And genetically we will make them. Well, from everything that I feel about the planet, and I've traveled everywhere on the earth except in communist countries and stuff like that. It is the excitement of the unknown. It is the excitement of the differences. It is the richness of being with minds that are not like yours, bodies that are different. And it seems to me that if we were on a planet where every single person had exactly the same IQ, was exactly the same shape, exactly the same everything, it wouldn't be the vibrance of Earth. And there may be something about this experiment, and I accept completely that we are an experiment, and that the evolutionary models that went through from Homo erectus and Denisovan and Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon and on, and that there may be a lot of hybrids on this planet right now, which is what Barbara Lamb is convinced, and that the hybrids are an effort to manipulate somehow the evolution of consciousness on Earth. I accept all of it because I really do think that there is this divine field and wants all of the souls ultimately to choose to return to the divine field. And at the biggest level, then, you would automatically, in a variety of all that is Earth, with power brokers always trying to have more than everybody else, that something is at work in which the power broking doesn't answer all of the problems, and that humans are beginning to find within themselves, having to do with race, having to do with the sexual problems, all of it, that if we could grow up more and we would look at each other the way that beautiful concept in Greece, the agape love. Agape love, it's, you look at a baby, or you look at a kitten, or you look at a precious life, and you feel pressure in your soul, you feel pressure in your chest, looking at something that you truly love at an agape level can bring tears. To me, that is the level that all humans really want. Everybody wants to be happy and to know love and security. That's really what everybody wants, no matter how they play it out. And that this could be that we, as we go into space, ironically, the cold, difficult, challenging space, trying to get a base on Mars and the moon, it could be that will be the beginning of when humans on this earth begin to understand agape love with each other. If that happens, we might survive as a species.
Yeah, because it must be this way. I haven't traveled to space. I don't know if you have, Linda, but I haven't traveled to space. But certainly listening to other astronauts that have observed the planet from up there, the only conclusion that is consistent with everybody that has had that opportunity is that they look back at Earth seeing it as nothing but fragile, right? That it is not what you think it is.
That's right.
And that's everybody needs that lesson, right? But we can't do it. Everybody can't be an astronaut. But how do we convey that thought to everybody on this planet? And certainly it would help.
And Jimmy, that is coming right back to how I felt when I saw that headline, 500 million to 1 billion life forms in the last 2 weeks in Australia may have died because of all the fires. And there was that feeling of wanting to vomit, and then there was that feeling of wanting to cry with all of those animals, all of those species, and all of the humans that are there. And when you feel that to me is the center core of our best, that we have that. It is like entanglement. We are entangled with other life. And when we feel it, and when we feel their agony, then to me, we are beginning to grow up and evolve. And we are on a planet that is fragile, and it is unstable. We may go through a lot more volcanoes and earthquakes and floods. And whatever this experiment is about, and I think it is an experiment for at least 2 million years from Homo erectus to now, there has been evidence, and I've talked with military whistleblowers who have said we do have allies, and they are concerned about us. And if those allies out there that are not Homo sapien sapien but made the experiment on Earth, and that some of the whistleblowers and remote viewers feel strongly that we have allies and they have concern, then maybe part of the experiment is exactly what we are all living through. And if we make it and we get a base on Mars and the moon, and we finally get that headline, we're not alone in this universe, and we are finally introduced to the friendlies and the neutrals, and we learn about the hostiles, that's when, Jimmy, entanglement, holographic universe, other dimensions, other timelines, all of it, it won't be words in a book. It will be an entire species that evolved for 2 million years through everything it's been through and comes out being able to travel in our own solar system, in the galaxy, with concepts of other dimensions, other timelines, portals, and then they will start living it. And maybe that's what the experiment is about.
Yeah, because when, simulation theory and quantum mechanics and quantum theory and theoretical physics and all of these aspects of the equations come into play, because once one thing falls, everything falls, right? And when that happens, I would say the majority of this planet, educated or not, is going to go, well, it makes sense, because there had to be something more. This couldn't be all that there is. And then we move forward. And I'm okay with that, Linda. I really am. I don't think people are going to go into shock like we're led to believe. And there's one last thing. We were talking about religion. Great conversation tonight, by the way.
I loved it. Thank you.
If there is a depository of known fact on this planet, if there is truly a collection of knowledge, it resides underneath the Vatican. All right, they've been collecting this stuff for a very long time. Is there a way to not necessarily get at the information? That could be nearly impossible, but to get the Vatican to finally come out and address this directly? If we don't get it out of Washington or another state actor, certainly the Vatican is in possession of this information, and they know what's going on.
And sadly, that whole evolution was always one of power and competition.
That's right.
It's the biggest paradox. It is truly a paradox. And when there is power and competition, the last thing that power and competition wants is to reveal to the world that there may be other truths. So it's strange. We have military and government power groups that they want to control all of the knowledge because that gives them the power. And we, the people, left in the dark and abused with lies, are something to get money from, and we are not considered to be an important part of the equation. And then strangely, when you come to some of the large forces, such as what has been behind the evolution of the Vatican, it's very similar. It's truly is similar, the military government and what has been behind the Vatican. So to get all of that material that would be in those vaults of the Vatican that would possibly contradict some of the we'll call it the
dogma
boxed knowledge. Does that make sense? A boxed knowledge.
The dogma.
Boxed in very certain rules and may not have anything to do with truth.
Right.
Boxed knowledge wants to protect its boxed knowledge. And whether it's military, whether it's government, whether it's billionaires, whether it's boxed knowledge, the one constant challenge on this planet is how do we burst open the facts and the truth when there are power brokers who consider that a threat? And that, to me, is what this next big revolution has to be about. We have to break open all of the box knowledges and power broking to something that begins to resemble what the real truth is. And how it happens, I think that sometimes in your own life, have you ever had something happen that was just so stunning and so shocking, and you couldn't have prepared for it, you couldn't have created it, and somehow something in your life just explodes and you go a completely different direction? That, to me, is the sign of the divine field interacting with this creation. And that may be what it's going to take on this planet. And it may, Jimmy, it may come through all of this, we'll call it the unstable struggle that we are all going to have with a planet that is going through warming and instability. And then what happens to the surface life?
Hear, hear, Linda Moulton Howe. What a great conversation tonight. And we didn't even get into, we'll do it next time.
Okay.
We didn't talk about climate change, and that's a whole show in itself anyway. But you're going to be out here with this February 7th through the 10th, Conscious Life Expo. What are you going to be presenting this year?
I am doing 2 updates, one on all my bismuth, magnesium, zinc work that people have heard about through my books and through Earth Files and TTSA. But I have something I think that's going to be very special to share with people about why this layered metal might be really important. And then I'm going to be doing an update on all of my Antarctica work because I've done the film that is out and I have talked to everybody about Spartan 1 and 2. Well, I have been getting other whistleblowers with other information, even other photographs. And I'm going to be doing an update from whistleblowers on Antarctica architecture that is definitely there, at least 2 miles under ice. And as Spartan 1 said to me the first time we met and talked, what right does any power broker on the earth, this century or any other century, have to keep humans from knowing that there are huge structures not made by humans deep under the ice of Antarctica, and they could be 34 million years old? Why do we all not have a right to know everything that is there?
What right do they have? The answer is none. Linda Moulton Howe, you are the best. We'll see you in 3 weeks, and I'm very excited to have you on the panel and to see. And you know what? I think I might introduce you, and we'll see. we'll see you in 3 weeks. Thank you so much
for giving this wonderful space to have this wonderful conversation, Jimmy. You are the best, and I look forward to seeing everybody and getting hugs at Conscious Life Expo, where we all feel like we are kind of a family after the truth. Thank you, Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. And everybody can view the trailer for Linda's new film, Antarctica, Alien Secrets Beneath the Ice, over at earthfiles.com. Safe travels, Linda. We'll see you in 3 weeks.
Take care, Jimmy.
Thank you. Linda Moulton Howe. And we went pole to pole, coast to coast on that one. I've got to roll credits and get out of here. Linda Moulton Howe, Conscious Life Expo in 3 weeks. Again, earthfiles.com. Check out the trailer for her new documentary, Antarctica, Alien Secrets Beneath the Ice. Fade to Black is produced by Rita Kamurian. Oh, man, I am lost. I'm lost with my credits. Executive producer, Rita Kamurian. Shows produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2019 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, right here on Fade to Black, Scott Wolter, America Unearthed. Until tomorrow night, I want everybody to be safe. Go back, Lee Tappy.